My presentation will be a welcome to federated identity. Federated identity might be a new term for you, but it's becoming important in the internet as a way to connect services to organizations. We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about how Japan can benefit from it, how libraries can benefit from it in Japan. So first I want to say thank you to Hayase-san and to Matsuyama Daigaku for inviting me. It's very, very kind of them, very generous of them to have invited me to give this presentation. First, I'll talk about what federated identity is, what the basic concept is, why would we do this? And then I'll talk about why federated identity is valuable. What can it do for us? Why should we bother? And maybe the more important question, who is it valuable for? As a university, our job is to serve our researchers, to serve our students, to serve our staff, to make sure that they have the best education and the best resources possible to do their jobs. After that, I'll talk about how you can get started using federated identity. The starting point will be different in Japan because of the infrastructure here, but I'll talk about some examples from other countries and some of the challenges, especially unique to Japan. Some of the things that you'll think about as this technology is deployed within Japan. So the first basic question is, why is shared identity important? Why are we doing this at all? And shared identity offers many benefits to applications, to organizations, and to users. Shared identity gives you authoritative user data, trusted user data, in the form of attributes. An attribute is a name-value pair about a user. So my name would be Nathan, as an example of an attribute. That data becomes authoritative, so there's one place where I can ask, I have someone who's trying to log in. What is their real name? What is their profession? Are they a student? Are they a staff? Are they faculty? It's very important to have trusted attributes. We also want there to be many applications. We want there to be many users. But we don't want many credentials. Right now in Japan, there are many logins, many logins, one login for every application. And that's a very difficult situation. America and Europe had that situation 15 years ago. Since then, we've made a lot of progress in fixing that situation. And now I can use one login, not only for applications at my organization, but also for cloud applications. So one login for everything. It's a very powerful technology. But any powerful technology is also kind of a complicated technology. And especially when we're dealing with people and with applications, the solution will be complicated because people are complicated and applications are complicated. Some people are both staff and students. They might be a researcher and a student. Applications do many things. There's a huge variety of applications. So if we're building one identity system for all of these applications and all of these users, it has to be a very flexible identity system. Shared identity also gives you regulatory compliance, which means that you have a good picture of who can see which data. You understand where student information is going and who is receiving that data. So that makes it easy to talk to the auditors who will come to a university and say, hey, where are you sending this person's information? Suddenly I have a good answer. If an auditor comes to a Japanese university where there are 15 logins, we can't give them a good answer. That information is everywhere. It's here, it's there, it's there. And that's not a good answer. And finally, the most important thing nowadays, especially in America, is cloud services. When I gave presentations 5 years ago, cloud services were a new idea, a new thing. Today, they are some of the biggest applications in the world, and they're the most important applications for many universities. There is software as a service, SaaS, platform as a service, identity as a service, and so forth. All of these are applications run by another organization, but you want to use your logins to go there. So shared identity allows you to do that. Federated identity connects your university, your library, to those cloud applications. And NetPlus is a project of Internet 2 to work with these cloud services to improve the quality of their identity, to improve their network, so that we get the best integration with schools. So federated identity itself is single sign-on, but it's a twist on single sign-on. The idea is basic. It's been used many times. You might know systems like Kerberos. Those are basic single sign-on systems. We added features to those basic single sign-on systems to fit a world where there are many organizations. So now there's trust information in there. There's trust relationships. You don't say, this is the one true source of identity information. You say, this is the one true source of identity information for this university. And that evolution, rather than innovation, means we know the model works, and the changes to the model are only the necessary small changes. Single logout becomes a very difficult problem, because suddenly you don't control all the applications. You don't control the entire picture. You control a small part of the picture. So if a user clicks logout when they're at Google, does that log them out of Google? Does that log them out of Google and the university? Does it log them out of Google, the university, and Elsevier, and all other applications? It's a very difficult problem. We don't have a good answer yet. There is a lot of research and a lot of development on how to do logout, and an important part of that is understanding what users mean when they click logout. What is a user's expectation? So this is a problem, but it's not a problem we have to solve yet, because getting single sign-on in place and getting single sign-on right is a good start. There's also provisioning, which is getting information into the application, and that can be a challenge too. But that's also a later concern. The things on the top of the slide are the important things to get working now. And finally, federated identity is widely used. There are corporations, there are governments, there are militaries, there are many, many places that use federated identity. There's only one place that uses a federation, and that's research and education, academia, daigaku. The reason is that for all of those other services, they have one-to-one relationships. I'm a corporation. I'm Boeing, the corporation. I have 5 companies that will sell me metal. I have a federated identity connection to each company, but there is no body over everything that makes sure that all those connections work, because they're solving a simpler problem. They're solving a problem where there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 organizations. We are trying to solve a problem where there are thousands or millions of organizations, and that makes it much harder. So you don't need a federation to do federated identity, but it makes it easier. This is a basic picture of what login looks like without federated identity, where one user has to have multiple IDs, multiple managed accounts, and multiple applications at the end of all of those. And if the user, imagine you are this user, and you have all your passwords remembered in your computer, and you lose your computer. You have to reset your password everywhere. Or maybe you just got married. Your name has changed. Now you have to go to every system and tell them, my new name is this, my new name is this. And suddenly that becomes a difficult problem. It's also very expensive for these resources because they have to, when I say, my name has changed, I call them on the phone and say that, and now they have to have a real person sitting there answering, making sure that I'm the real person and I'm not an attacker. And the same thing happens with password reset and other things too. So altogether, if you talk to the people who run Gmail, they say 85% of the cost of Gmail is password reset. It's not the electricity for the servers, it's not software development, it's helping people who forget their passwords. So if any of you use Gmail, you may notice now they ask for more information about you, like your phone number. They ask for other email addresses you have. They are doing that because they're trying to make password reset easier and cheaper, because it's something that they have to do. But in this world, every organization has to do it. So for the journal, it's expensive. For the university or the government, it's expensive. Everywhere, it becomes a big problem. The user has to manage many passwords. The login process is different, so I have to learn how to log into each application. And there may be custom requirements. Like for this journal, it may be IP address login, whereas for everywhere else, it's username and password. So again, you are maintaining many different systems, and that becomes very confusing. Federated identity gives you the ability to pull that together into one ID, one authority. So your university becomes your login source. So I can go to Google, and when I log into Google, they send me back to my university. I log in my university with my university ID and my password, and then I go back to Google, and Google says, okay, I recognize you, you're trusted, you're in. The same thing with Microsoft Office Live. The same with Elsevier, the same with many, many applications. It's a model that is working very well. And there's benefits for everyone. The services don't have to manage all that information. Their costs go down. Help desks don't have to answer so many questions because users don't need as much help. Users only have to remember one login or have one login. So they protect that better, and it becomes a stronger login. It also gives you the chance to control privacy. When information is all over the place like this, privacy is very difficult to control because the information's already gone. If you have the information in one place, then privacy is easy to manage because you have one place where you can say, these people can see information, these people can't. This is an ugly picture, I'm sorry. The other pictures are from professionals. This one is from me. So please bear with me. This is a basic example of how federated identity works. Usually the user will go to the service and say, I'd like to log in. I want access. then the service provider has to ask you a question. Where is your home? For you, it might be Matsuyama University or the University of Ehime. For me, I would say internet too. It is important for the service to send the user to the right login place. Doing that step well, having a good interface, asking users the right way is a big challenge. And I will show you some services that do a good job, and I'll show you some that do a bad job. After you discover the home of the user, you can say, please log in at your home. And they go back and they go to the login system at their home identity provider. That login can happen any way necessary. The login is only between the user and the identity provider. So that gives you a lot of freedom. You can choose the best technology for your campus, and it doesn't affect the rest of the world. I can use Kerberos logins here and still get to Microsoft Office because they don't care. They just get this information back. So that freedom is also very valuable. After the user logs in, the identity provider, which is responsible for getting information about the user and signing it and encrypting it and sending it, will say, here's some data about you for this service. And it will wrap that up. It will do all the cryptography and all the signatures. And now the user has this piece of information. It's called an assertion. When they deliver that data to the service provider will unpack it. They'll do the security checks. They'll do the decryption. They'll check the signature, and then they'll say, okay, I have trusted information about you from your university. I'll either let you see the page, or I will say, you can't see this resource. Here's why. Here's how you can find help. There are many different ways this can actually happen because the technology is very flexible, but this is the basic flow. This is what happens most of the time. There are many protocols for federated identity. There were some early ones like SAML 1.1, Shibboleth 1.x, some legacy OpenID, and there are some early ones that died, that didn't work, like IMI InfoCards from Microsoft, WS Star, the Liberty Alliance, etc. The important thing to know about these protocols is that you should know nothing about these protocols. Don't learn about the protocols, don't teach the protocols to the applications, because protocols change. Protocols will always change. New protocols will come, and when a new protocol comes, you don't want to change every application. And if an application speaks a protocol directly, and that protocol changes, you have to change the application. Instead, you need identity software that can speak many protocols. So you don't care what protocol is being used, and the application doesn't care. That means you enable an application for federated identity one time, and then the application can speak many different protocols without realizing it. There are other benefits of using security software that is implemented once. Implementation of security software by people who are not specialists in security almost always have holes, almost always have vulnerabilities. And there have been very high-profile vulnerabilities. Companies like Facebook and Twitter have designed federated identity protocols that had security holes. And it becomes very embarrassing for them. They are on the front page of the New York Times. Your information has been stolen by 15 different... it's a very bad situation, and they have learned to be very careful with their implementation. So we don't want applications to implement this because we don't want to be in the newspaper. We want them to use software that was designed by specialists So the application doesn't need to know anything other than I need to log the user in, so I'll ask the system, log the user in. And then information comes back. Now I have attributes, I have the user's information, I'm ready to go. That's all. So the application doesn't speak a protocol at all. The major protocols in use today for federated identity, just for your own knowledge, like I said, applications shouldn't know this and users shouldn't know this, but for your knowledge, the basic protocols are SAML 2.0 in the federated world, in the business world. In business, government, research, library, SAML 2.0 is the primary protocol. In Twitter and Facebook, OAuth 2.0 is the primary protocol. And eventually, there's a new standard, OpenID Connect, that will be important, but that standard's not done yet. So those are the three specific technologies to learn about if you're interested in the protocols. But like I said, I hope you don't need to know about the protocols. Instead, you use software that knows protocols, and your job is to connect users and applications. Federations are not necessary for federated identity, as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation. It's something that we're only doing in research, in higher ed, in libraries. So why are we doing it differently? Because we're trying to do this on a big scale. Facebook, Twitter, Google, they don't want a lot of logins. They want you to choose Facebook, Twitter, or Google. If a website has 3 buttons, you know those buttons are going to be Facebook, Twitter, and Google. So they don't want to solve the problem. Solving the problem becomes a problem for them. They just want you to use buttons. So you'll see on many applications today, log in with Facebook as a button. That is actually federated identity, but it's with only one identity provider. Many services, but one IDP. There are a lot of universities in the world. There are thousands. There are tens of thousands. So we need to solve the problem in a smarter way. We can't just use one button. So we are using federations which allow you to connect many identity sources and many services together without having to go out and do many handshakes. We can make a federation in this room, and we all just tell Hayase-san, this is my name, this is information about me. And then he can tell everyone, I have a master record. You can just check with me. Otherwise, I have to go to everyone and shake your hand and say, hello, my name is Nate. Now you have to go talk to everyone else, and it doesn't work. So federated identity has been, our federations have been very useful in research, that they have not been useful in the consumer world. And that's because there's lots of universities, but there's only one Facebook. So typically today, there's one federation per sector, like in research and education, or in government, or in military, and per country. Every country has their own. This is because of different privacy laws and different data protection laws. Especially Europe has very strong privacy laws. And in the United States, we have no privacy laws. We have privacy laws, but they do nothing. They don't exist. So it becomes difficult to write one policy that fits all these countries because they have different laws, different courts, different systems. So right now, today, there's usually one federation per country. We're working on solving this problem so that many countries can work together, many federations can work together. Because right now, a publisher like Elsevier or EBSCO has to join each federation and list each federation. And that's a challenge for them. So this is not a solved problem yet. There's also cultural differences. In Europe, that privacy protection is very important. In America, we have the NSA. We don't believe that we have privacy. We know we don't have privacy. So suddenly those cultural differences become very hard to fit together. The major federation in the US is InCommon. InCommon now has more than 600 members, so it's bigger than Internet 2, which is great. It's making a lot of money now, it's profitable, so it will be very successful. The Japanese version is Gakunin, Gakujutsu Nincho Federation, and that started about 5 years ago, and I think there are 80 universities in Gakunin now. Overall, across the world, there are 7,125 services or identity providers in 35 federations. So we have a lot of services, we have a lot of identity providers. The deployment is huge, but it's also in discrete pieces, and we need to connect those pieces. And I think I've talked about this. These are words that I've discussed these ideas, but you can look at the slides, the translations, and you'll be able to understand some of the things I was talking about a little bit better. So I will go on to a map of the federations in the world today. Excuse me. And you'll see that different parts of the world have different progress. Europe probably has the most success. They have the culture, they have the small countries that know how to work together, they have the history, they have the laws. Europe has been the most successful. A country like Switzerland has had 100% of students with federated identity for 7 or 8 years now. Countries like France are close to 90% or 95%. In the United States, we're only at 15 or 20%. In Japan, maybe 10 or 15%. And then there are other countries in other parts of the world that are really just starting. Countries like Russia or China or South Africa are really just starting to build federations. We're trying to share this technology as much as we can because federated identity becomes more powerful the more services and the more identity providers there are. If I have an identity provider and there are 5 services in the world, it's not very valuable. If I have an identity provider and there are 5,000 services, this becomes interesting. It's the same for services. I can set up federated identity and get logins from 5 universities, who cares? But if I can get logins from 5,000 universities, suddenly the math changes. This is just one of the graphs of how many logins are happening per day in, this is in the Netherlands, Holland. The pink line is the best line for following everything. It combines the blue line and the green line because they had 2 different systems. We in America can't collect these numbers because in Holland, the way that they do federated identity is through one central SurfNet organization. We don't do that centrally in America, so we don't know how many logins are happening. We can ask a university. The University of Toronto in Canada has 200,000 logins a day. But we can't collect all that information. We can just ask them, hey, Toronto, how many people are logging in? And that's all. But this shows you some of the growth. And recently, you'll see there's a big spike up. Part of that is the start of the academic year. The other bigger part is now many universities are using things like Google Apps. And if you look at the top logins, the top places people are going, it's always cloud services. In America, universities are adding 3 or 4 cloud services a week. It's very fast. It's all with federated identity. It's become very important. So services like Box or DocuSign or Google or the long list, Office, Microsoft Office, all of these services are what people log into. They don't log into our local systems as much anymore. A lot more work is happening in the cloud. And that's a change that we can't stop, because the cloud vendors are running very good systems, they're building very good software, and we just need to connect to it. We can't compete with them. I'm not going to run a better application engine than Google Apps for Education. I can't. It would be too much money, too difficult. Instead, I just connect to what they have done. So this graph is a little bit old, but this is the number of participants in common year by year, and it gives you an idea of how the growth happened. We started off really small with 20 or 30 universities and services. So this was, we call them the true believers, the people who said, I think this idea will win. I'll give it a try. And we're very thankful to them for their early hard work. So some universities like Penn State, Ohio State, Stanford, they were early universities that believed this is the future. We're going to join. There were also publishers like Science Direct Elsevier, ProQuest, OCLC. All of those publishers also said, yeah, we think this is the future too, and we'll help. And then others started to say, hey, now there's a lot of identity providers. Hey, there's a lot of services. Hey, there's a lot of value here. And now it's growing much faster. And you'll see the graph here ends in 2012 because I don't have the original numbers. But I can give you the more recent numbers where we have more than 600 participants now. And each participant matters, and they are real participants because they pay us money. We charge. That makes InCommon different from almost every other federation in the world. But to be an InCommon member, you're paying us between $1,000 and $5,000 every year, which means InCommon is making a lot of money now. We're very profitable. That allows us to support the network. It allows us to support research. It allows us to develop new services. It's a great thing. Our goal was never to make money, but now we can use this money for good things. Participants include services and identity providers. There are now more than 400 university members in the USA. For comparison, there's about 3,000 universities in America. So we've got about 13% of the universities, which is not much. We've got most of the big ones, almost all the big ones, the ones that have the staff, that have the money, that have the ability, they've joined. Right now, we are reaching the smaller universities, the Bowling Green States, the University of Nebraska, the small universities you've never heard of. And they don't have the staff or money, and they are just learning how to do this themselves. So our curve, our growth curve, is not going to have this shape forever. It's going to flatten off at some point. But where we really want to grow now is with services. So between these 400 university members, there are 7.5 million users, staff, students, and faculty, and that's a lot. And those are the real users. When you go to a service and say, if you enable this technology, we can deliver 7.5 million university people to you, they listen, because that's suddenly a lot of people and a lot of money. We're working with 29 government agencies, labs, and research centers. The government is fun. The government is strange to work with. They have different requirements, they have different rules, they have different ideas. It's been a challenge, but I'm thankful that they are partnering with us and trying to make things work. And some of them can be very important for federated identity and libraries, like NIH. NIH maintains a huge library of many different publications. PubMed, if you've heard of it. And they are interested in federated access to PubMed. But they have all these rules and all these laws, and it becomes a very difficult and different problem. So we're working actively with the government and with research labs. And there are right now 156 corporations in Common. And if you want to join in Common as a corporation, a school has to sponsor you. You can't just say, hey, I want to sell stuff to kids. I want to join. You have to say, I'm working with this university, and I'm going to work with other universities. This university sponsors me, and now I can join. So each of those 156 corporate partners has a sponsor university. They work with many universities, but one university said, these are important partners for us. They should be able to join. So if you want to see a current list of all the participants, you can go to this URL, and you can see if your favorite university is there, or your favorite library, journal, or whoever is important to you. The most important members that we don't have are Apple and Google. Microsoft is a member, and Google has joined other federations. Google has joined the federation in the Netherlands, in Holland. They have not joined in Common, because in America, they think they are the center of the world. And they might be right, I don't know. But we're working on trying to get them to join too. I just wanted to run through the benefits for the various people who use federated identity. There's the users who have fewer credentials. They get single sign-on, privacy and control, access to services from anywhere, and a more consistent experience. Login feels the same everywhere they go, and that makes it harder for phishing attacks to work. I don't know how to translate phishing attack, but it is when someone, an attacker sends a special email or a special link to people at a university and say, your account is going to expire unless you send us these 5 pieces of information about you. Give us your username, give us your password, and those attacks always catch someone. They always catch someone. Making it more consistent allows people to say, hey, this doesn't look right. I'm not going to give you this information. You're not my IDP. So it helps in that regard. There's also benefits to the application. Applications don't have to administer the users. It becomes much cheaper for the application to have those users. You give better access to those users. So a user can go home and still log into library resources. They can do their work at home. They can study more. They can learn better. They can learn faster. The applications are better integrated with the organization. Everything fits together better, which is great for the cloud services and great for online library services, because they can feel like part of the university. Hey, I'm using my university login. Hey, my name is the same here. You know, everything is just connected much better. The applications get trusted user attributes. So we have some applications in Common that give special deals to students, or allow only people from this university to share cars. These are applications that require trusted information. So we're not just making old applications better, we're making new applications possible. And also, if someone does something bad, you can always work with the identity provider and the service provider to find out exactly who, which is good and bad. But it means that the service provider alone may not know everything, and the identity provider may not know everything. So overall, it's an improvement in privacy. The benefits to the school are that you can use all of these new cloud services in the world. They don't have to be owned or hosted by the university. The services can be connected through a single point. So you have one strong piece of infrastructure that doesn't break, and you don't have to run many different systems, because that becomes expensive and chaotic. There are pieces everywhere, chaos. And some authentication solutions, like IP address ranges for journals or VPNs, those things are very difficult for users, especially now with mobile devices and things like iPad, iPhone. So as those are removed from the authentication picture, now I can go home, I can log into Science Direct using my username and password on my iPad. That's great. I don't have to use a VPN. I don't have to use a campus network. I'm in, and I can study. So how can I get started actually using this? This used to be a very difficult question because early on, there were so few services and so few identity providers that we didn't have a good story. We couldn't say, you'll have 7.5 million users. We could say, you might have 50,000 users, if you're lucky. But now the number of services and the number of identity providers is very large. So other countries have solved the chicken and egg problem, if you've heard of that. There's also the network effect. Your identity provider, your service becomes more and more powerful the more partners you have. Today there are thousands of services that are very interesting for universities. Office 365, Google Apps, Canvas, Moodle, Blackboard, Desire to Learn, WebAssign. Those are all learning management systems. They all support federated identity. Elsevier, EasyProxy, Xlibris, HiWirePress, JSTOR, ProQuest. It's just a short list of the identity vendor, the library vendors, the journal vendors that are able to speak federated identity. So when you set this system up, you have a lot of partners that you can talk to already. So getting started with federated identity in Japan, the first thing I recommend is to start working with Gakunin. Gakunin has some experts at NII who have been doing this technology for a long time, and they will be very happy and very helpful to help you get started with this technology. And they can speak Japanese, I can't. After you start talking with Gakunin, you'll set up an identity provider, one place where your users can log in and access a number of services. There's lots of free open source software that you can use for this, and it was written by security experts, so you can have confidence that it was done right. Simple SAML PHP and Shibboleth are two of the most famous examples. And you can get connected with some applications. The killer application is going to be different everywhere, but in most countries today, the killer application is not an application you run. It's a cloud application. It's not yours anymore. So I don't have time to go through these examples from the user perspective, but on your own, you can visit these and see what it's actually like to do federated identity as a user. And I may have time to do one of them. We'll see if this works. Maybe not. So at the end, if there's time, I'll go through and show you what some of this looks like, just so you can understand from a user, I'm doing federated identity. This is actually happening, and this is what it feels like. In Japan, there are some unique challenges to getting started with federated identity. Particularly, researchers and staff are often the same people in Japan. And that's not true anywhere else in Europe or America or those other countries. And that means that the staff members who run an identity provider also have to publish research papers. So they don't have time for the identity provider. Or you don't have staff who have their job being only running IT. And there's just not many staff members at universities. Budgets are small here. Budgets are low. So the most important start is to get the right people and get the right money in place in order to be able to do this. The other major challenge in Japan is building the user database that powers federated identity. If we look at the way back here where things happened, when we send data about the user, or when the user logs in, they're logging in to a central place. There's one place where we store user data. One login, one set of names, one set of attributes, and that's great because we can tell the world this information is the right information for you. And that's not something that you can do if you have many user databases. If you have 5 LDAP directories, then which one do you connect to the world? When Box comes to your school and says, hey, we're offering Box in Japanese. This will be great for your users. How do we connect to you? If you don't have one directory, one source of user information, that's a very difficult question to answer. So starting on this is very important. Getting one LDAP directory, one centralized thing, is very important. And in the US and in Europe, we were lucky because people already did this. Before federated identity, we had centralized databases, which made our jobs much easier. Here, we still need to build the central LDAP and SQL databases. Other challenges are adding SSO to local applications. Especially here, you have many applications that you wrote locally. Again, please don't program protocols directly into those applications. Instead, enable those applications to use security software so that when protocols change, when security holes are found, it's not your problem. You just upgrade your software. You don't have to change your application. You don't have to change your code. Finding the right partner applications for your university. Cloud applications are not so important here right now, but I think they're becoming more important. More and more people are using Google Apps. More and more people are using Office 365. And if you can't connect your university to Google Apps, people won't use your login system. People won't use you. They'll still use Google Apps. They'll say, this is the easiest way I can get my job done. This is the best way I can connect to my students. But I'm not going to do it using the university system, because the university system is in 5 pieces, it's slow, and it stinks. So, very important to connect to the applications and get them working well so that your users come to you and say, I want you to help me connect to this application. And finally, making sure the user experience is good. Make sure it's easy for users to do it. There's lots of research on this, going through academic journals and going through, Yahoo pulled 10 people off the street and said, try logging in. And they watched the users. They watched what the users do. Watch where the user clicks, watch where the user does something, and you can learn a lot about building a good interface. Make sure you build good interfaces, good user interface, very important. I'm out of time, so I have to say thank you again. This is my basic contact information. I'll be available for questions later in the day. But I want to say thank you again to Hayase-san for the invitation. Thank you to Matsuyama University for supporting my travel. And thank you all for coming to listen. Arigatou gozaimashita.